My name is Sir Evans. I'm the founder of Superpower Plan, where we help overlooked achievers like you tap into your unique superpower and apply it to a purpose driven plan. Each week, we try to focus on a morning motivation message, really to help inspire, empower, and motivate you throughout not only your day, but throughout your week, and sometimes the months to come. Today, I want to talk about a girl and her goats. I went to Bowling Green State University, and I'll never forget it because of the season that I was in before I went to Bowling Green. My passion and my heart was still in music. D Block, Ludacris, Rick Ross, 50 Cent, we shared the stage with them. And music was something that if you would have asked me 10, 15, 20 years ago after what I could be making money off of aside from music, I wouldn't have been able to give you an answer. My life was music. But it was also a point in a time where I really was living a way that I'm not too proud of, and really just dealing in a lifestyle that ultimately would have landed me in dead or in jail. It was the loss of my mother in 2006 that really changed that trajectory that actually brought me to Bowling Green State University. When my mother passed away in 2006, it devastated me, changed my life. I had never had to go through a loss like that. And I think the thing that impacted me more than anything was knowing that my mother was watching me. My mother, she was an educator for over 30 years. She taught in the Cleveland Public School District, came from a small town in Virginia, Charlottesville, Virginia, went to Kentucky State University. My mother always wanted me to be happy. Regardless of what it was that I was doing, if music was what it was that made me happy, she wanted me to do that. My dad, on the other hand, different side of the spectrum. My dad was totally focused on education. Education was the key, being an artist himself and seeing the hardships that artists go through, the ups and downs and struggles. He wanted me to have my education so that I always had that to fall back on. But when my mother passed, a light bulb went off. I thought about all of the lives that my mother had touched or impacted over her years. Being an educator for 30 years, so many students, thousands of students come in and out of your classrooms over such a time frame, to the point where I had to ask myself, if my mother could dedicate her life to teaching students, helping them to get to that next level, if she could spend her entire life educating these people and changing lives, why couldn't her son finish his education? If my mother could teach all of these students for all of these years, then I owed it to her to go back and get my education. And if music was meant to be afterwards, then it would be. But I knew that I would have a backup plan as a result of this, and I knew that I would have made my mother proud and honored her legacy as an educator. It wasn't until my junior year of college that I really remembered what I was there for, and it was my mother. I spent the first 3 years partying, kicking it, spiraling, not to mention my sister passed away 2 years after my mother, which would have been my first year at Bowling Green State University. While some may say that this spiral was justifiable, I knew what I had dedicated this time to, and it was for my mother. So that junior year, I really wanted to dive in and really make the most out of my opportunity. Every day I spent in the library, and I even got a tutor. It was a quantitative methods class that changed everything for me and my perspective. We used to have study groups, tutoring sessions where our tutor, she would sit down with 2 to 3 students at once who might have the same class and help them maximize the opportunity and to help them all at the same time. One day, we decided to take our tutoring session to a different location. And one of the young ladies that was in, she volunteered her home. Sure, you guys can come over to my place and we can just do our tutoring since our finals are coming up, and we can just study at my place. I said, cool, sweet, perfectly fine with me. And as I'm looking around her home, I said, this is a very nice house for a college student. How much do you pay for rent here? And she says, I own the home. I said, college student, owning your own home in Bowling Green. I was curious, astonished. I was shocked. I had never seen anything like that. So of course I asked more questions. I said, well, tell me more. How did you acquire this home? The home was available at a fraction of the price that it would have originally been at. And she was in a prime position to capitalize on this. When she was a child, her dad would buy goats for her every year. It's not sure how many, but every year, at least one, he would buy goats. She was responsible for taking care of this goat, preparing this goat for the upcoming year because they would go to the fair. Each year, they'd go to the fair and they would sell those goats. Each year, she would get better and better. Each year, they might have even gotten more goats. Every year that she raised those goats, her dad would put aside the money from the sale into a special account. Between those funds that she had raised for those goats and the interest that had accrued as a result of that time spent in that bank, she decided she would invest it into this home. Being a kid from West 130th and Bel Air in Cleveland, Ohio, we didn't grow up with doctors, lawyers in our communities. We damn sure didn't grow up with goats, farmers in our community either. I couldn't believe that this girl had purchased a house from goats. After this tutoring session, I was so excited. I went and told one of my good friends about this situation. And I said, look, man, this girl just bought a house off of goats. She bought the house off of goats. And I'm explaining the whole scenario to him. And he's listening and he's quiet. I'm really just looking for some feedback and saying, maybe we should get into the goat business. But he sits in silence for a few moments and then he says, sir, that's a really cool story. But you know one thing that I noticed from that story? I said, what? She did what she knew. She was able to make that money and make that profit in an area that she was already well versed in. She knew goats. She knew that farm. Her dad was able to help her in ways that she wasn't, to be able to understand how to raise, how to take care of these goats in order to prepare them for that upcoming fair year. He says, sir, you don't need to sell goats. You need to do what you do best. One of my superpowers is not necessarily music. My superpower is communication. And through that communication, it allows me to be a brilliant artist, amongst other things that come from being able to communicate with my audience. If this has been fruitful to you, we'd love for you to subscribe to the channel, hit the like button. That way we can keep the lights on. And that way we can help to make sure that we're making the content that appeals to our audience, that helps them to be able to develop, understand their superpower, and apply it to a purpose-driven plan better and stronger than before. There's a few things that I want you to keep in mind throughout your week, throughout your day, that you can take away from this experience that I definitely did. The first thing is your perspective is everything. Oftentimes we spend our lives in these small bubbles of existence built upon the back of our culture, our community, our education, our experiences. But rarely do we step outside of those to get a gauge of someone else's understanding from their educational experiences, their cultural backgrounds, and all of the things that come with them. It's helpful to our growth, whether it's mentally, spiritually, emotionally, financially, and in our career. If I wasn't in this tutoring session, the chances of me having this conversation with this young lady are close to zero. I would have never had this conversation. But even once we're in this environment, I still have to be mindful enough to ask questions. Be mindful enough to be able to absorb the information that they're sharing. Then sharing it with that close friend of mine, we were able to bounce it off and really be able to frame it in a way that is something that can be edifying to me as well. Sir, you don't need to sell goats. You don't need to sell goats, unless that's a niche of yours. But what is it that you do best? That perspective is something that helps us to continue to grow and show us so many different facets and areas of life that can help with our development. And more importantly, I believe that we all have things that we love to do. And when we're thinking about it financially, or when we're thinking about it from our passion or our work, how can we apply what we love to do to our work? How can we apply what we love to do to our family? How can we apply what we love to do to our relationships? There's so much to be learned from the communities and the people around us. And I don't want you to miss out. I don't want you to miss an opportunity to be able to take a nugget away from someone else that could ultimately change your life.